All right, hello. Welcome to the Lost Dice Podcast. I'm joined by Matt today, and I'm Bill. And we're trying to podcast. This is a first try for us. We're going to figure this out as we go. We worked through a couple technical glitches, and we think we've got everything in order. So, Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Bill. I hope we get everything straightened out. I
Yeah,
think you're doing a good job so far.
thanks. So, anyways, this is going to be kind of an informal podcast amongst a group of friends here in Wisconsin, and the idea is for us to kind of chat about games and tabletop wargaming and all things that we enjoy for hobbies. Yeah, pretty informal podcast. We're hoping to talk about a couple of subjects each time. Our format should be pretty straightforward. We just want to chat for 20, 30 minutes. We hope you enjoy, and eventually we'd like to get some feedback going and get some chat. We're live on Twitch right now. We posted on Facebook and stuff. Hopefully get some people joining in as we do this. My goal with this is to spend some time talking to my friends because I don't get to do it very often. So I'm going to kick things off. This week, I finally am going to get some gaming in. I'm a fan of Adeptus Titanicus, which is a Warhammer game. It's one of their smaller games that they have out there. And I've been working on painting some of the models for it. And there's an event going on in Madison this weekend called the Cataclysm of Iron Round 2. The past round was a few months ago that I participated in. It was a great time. There was 12 of us participating in a 2-day event. It's a weekender. So I went out and hung out with some friends out there and got quite a few games in of Adeptus Titanicus. It's a wonderful robot smash 'em, shoot 'em game. It's something that kind of tugs all the nostalgia strings and also, big smashy robots and all the things I like about gaming. And in my personal life, I really do enjoy painting, robots. So kind of fits all of my things. The Cataclysm of Iron 2 that's going on this weekend is kind of a narrative scenario thing, something that I'm way into. It's full of all kinds of little nooks and crannies that are within the game that don't really fall into the rules. One of the things that really excites me about it is we actually take the time, much like an RPG, to name our robots, the pilots that are in the robots. We came up with some backstories between us to kind of make some fake drama. It has all these little kind of RPG elements and narrative kind of storylines that flow through all this. So coming out of the last one, I'm a little disappointed that I'm not going to be able to make the second day of this because between myself and another player at this event, we were pretty excited to have a grudge. So I've got a grudge with another player. His robot was very upset that I took him out. It was the only robot I took out the entire time through 4 games last time. But this one guy is still pissed off about it. So we are playing that back in. I'm pretty stoked about it. Sadly, I won't be able to
So
really do much about it.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
I'm not a Warhammer guy per se. As you can
Yeah.
see, it's like the wall of games behind me.
Yep.
I love to play. I mean, I'll play it. I was into Shadespire.
Yeah.
Do you come in with like a point, like 100-point team or?
Yeah. Yeah, so the way it works, it's like most of Games Workshop's games where they kind of leave you to build your list. They offer you rule books, they offer factions. The box sets come with a set of models that will let you kind of build any of the factions. The sets are typically kind of generic. It's set in the Horus Heresy era of Warhammer, which is the quote 30K era of Warhammer.
Oh, nice.
In that particular part of the timeline, it's more space marine centric because the galaxy they haven't spread out that far in the galaxy, and they haven't run into some of the Xenos and the other alien races that are out there. So really, you kind of are picking slices of a similar faction. So most of the Titan legions that are in there have their own kind of backstory and their own things to it. The models feel pretty samey, but it's more of a blank canvas. So you're building a list. Yeah. In this case, in this particular campaign, narrative campaign that we're doing, it's a range of sizes. So specifically 500 points up to 1,500 points. The last round that we did was only 1,500 point games, and then we had one kind of what we consider a joust, which means everybody brought a thing. And then we had all of us on a larger table and kind of duked it out, good versus evil, or in this case, it's the Legio Titans versus the Heresy Titans. I think I'm getting this all wrong. Sorry, Warhammer guys, but good versus bad. And yeah, you're kind of set on your own. Luckily, Shadespire is I think drawing some folks in because you don't have to do that. You have to make a deck in that game, but you get to show up and you have pretty straightforward system where it's like, okay, I bought this faction and I take the guys out of the box and I put it on the table. This is one of those older school war games where it's like, go get a couple boxes of guys, put together some of them. You may only use 2/3 because that's how many points it works out to be. But yeah, the 1,500 points isn't just the cost of the models. It's also like, what guns did he have? Did he have anything on his head or his shoulders? Does he have different guns on his arms? So there's that level of customization. There are some default ones that are in there. They give you some guidelines in there, like, hey, you can make this. They're called maniples, which is a group of titans that go together. You can make one and base it on this. So there's pretty good guidance in there, but it's definitely an old school game. Like, okay, get out your pencil, paper, make a list, write down the points, do the things. So yeah,
Man, every time I talk to a Warhammer guy or Games Workshop guy, it's like I want to get in, but it's such a commitment.
yeah. Oh,
And you have to paint. That's another thing.
yeah.
Another level.
You're absolutely right. Like the hardest part about any of these games, and it's not even exclusive to Games Workshop. Any other like tabletop war game, there's a whole hobby aspect to it. There's building, there's painting, there's time spent, even just kind of like theory crafting. Like, okay, and that isn't exclusive to tabletop gaming. Obviously, you can do that for board games too, about how you want to play your strategies, etc. But
Right.
there's that cliff. For me, like, because I've been doing this a good chunk of my life, like that part isn't intimidating, and I most of my friends know this, but I mostly am into the hobby part. I actually like the building and painting slightly more than
That's
playing the
hard.
game. Yeah, for me, like like right next to me here, you can see kind of my mess in the corner of the camera here. It's it's what I like doing. I like the airbrushing, I like the painting, I like the challenge of making it look cool. Or at least as far
For
as
sure.
my standards are concerned. I don't care if anybody else likes my shit. I'm pretty happy with my own stuff. But I do absolutely enjoy that that aspect of it. But yeah, you're right. It's a hard wall to climb. There's no shortage of it. Even with the Warhammer store in town now that we have locally, it's been interesting because every time I stop in there and talk to the guy, he's been able to, the manager there's been able to hook a couple of new guys, which I think is one of the hardest things to do. Like, to hook a new person in and convince them that, okay, well, you're gonna buy this game. It's not particularly cheap, and oh, by the way, it's just a bunch of parts inside. Good luck. You know what I mean? Like it's intimidating to say the least.
Yeah, it's like jumping into any hobby though.
Yeah.
Once you get your head wrapped around it, like I'm into 3D printing, and when I first got into it, I didn't know what I was doing, and then thanks to YouTube and a couple friends, I'm printing off cool stuff all the time.
Yeah, the when you bought that Gasland stuff, I was very excited to see that stuff. I know my brother is currently in the process of setting up and getting a 3D printer going, and
Nice.
I'm pretty stoked about that. And I've got the itch. I just right now know I can't possibly squeeze in more hobby stuff. But as I was building these robots, I was like, man, it'd be really awesome if I could print out a bunch of these emblems. Or if I could put this on there, or then my head starts going down that normal tract of nerd stuff. Like, I can make this way cooler, and
Yeah, yeah. Just wait until you start learning how to design, and that's
yeah,
the best part.
yeah.
Because people,
Go ahead.
way off the topic, but one of my friends, he's into fantasy football. He asked me if he can print a Lombardi Trophy and inscribe his name on it because he won, and he wanted to make it out of like this gold filament, and
Very
he wanted
cool.
3 of them for each, the first, second, and third place.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. See that, like,
and I've learned how to do that.
I think that like that stuff to me is like that like kind of tickles all of the different things I enjoy about doing hobby stuff. One of my favorite aspects of working on hobby stuff, and I do less of it now because I don't play as often. But there's a kind of a concept in the model making world of kit bashing or conversions. So a lot of the games start out with like, well, I got this cool guy, but in the game I want him to have a sword, not a gun, or I want him to have a gun, not a sword, whatever you might need. And I really enjoyed being able to take some putty and another sword from another thing and a little bit from this and that and make that. And so like 3D printing is just like a cooler manifestation or a higher tech version of that. And so I'm pretty geeked out about that. So one of these days there may be a resin printer in my future.
Oh, for sure. How did you get into Warhammer or 40K or any of that?
So a long time ago, I got into like kind of the Hero Quest tabletop dungeon crawl stuff from back in the day. Warhammer Quest, Hero Quest, those were the two main ones that we get started with a couple friends and my brother and one of my brothers. And we got in, we were pretty, I was just novices to it. And at some point, my friend's mother had taken us to a hobby store, and we're like, "Wait a second, you can be more than one guy, and instead of just being the barbarian in Hero Quest, you could be a whole bunch of barbarians." Wait, what? This would have been I would have been in 6th grade, so that's about what, I don't know, you're 11 or 12, and thankfully my family is fairly well to do and afforded me an allowance to buy Warhammer guys, because like it's not something that even back then it wasn't like easy to do, but the game was very cool, very appealing. The world and the lore that goes behind it was super attractive to a preteen and a teenager version of me. I thought all of the things in the old world of Warhammer was very cool, and things that fall into the category of Lord of the Rings, things that fall into high fantasy stuff with orcs and goblins and elves and that sort of stuff has always been super interesting to me. I think the onus was became it didn't start initially as like, oh, I really want to paint stuff and really want to get into the hobby side of things. It was like, oh, I just want to make a big army and get some cool ass dragons and stuff like that, and then make cool hills and trees and build the terrain out with my friends and have these long all day battles with all of them. And that was pretty much how we did it. I mean, almost all the way through college, essentially. And then we started getting into like a bit of the competitive scene at the end of high school and early college. And then, life happened, wife, kids, other stuff got in the way.
Sure.
But like all throughout, like something I've always done is kind of on this side, I've painted, I've built guys, I've put models together, less so for a game, more so just because like, hey, that's a cool giant figure. I think I'm just going to build and paint that. Whereas previously it was like, I want to build this giant to go along with my cool dragon in an army and play a game. But yeah, it goes back a long ways. I'm in my mid 30s now, so it's over 20 years worth of this stuff.
Right on. Does that like the entry to your tabletop hobby, was that Warhammer or was it like, RPGs or?
Yeah, Hero Quest was the thing. I got it for Christmas, and I was much younger at that point. I didn't actually learn how to play Hero Quest for the first 2 years I owned it. I was just like, this is awesome. I could build this cool dungeon, and then kind of just role played and faked it because I wasn't smart enough to read or understand all the rules at that point. And then I all of a sudden found friends, at school, and I was like, wait, you know what Hero Quest is? Wait a second. And then we learned how to play it. And one of the friends I had was a little older, so he could, read and interpret, and or at least, as best as kids can. And we just started doing that, and it manifested into playing Dungeons and Dragons. Not long after that, it manifested in, playing large scale Warhammer and then skirmish games. And Wartime was a big game for us amongst our group of friends. At one point, I think we peaked at either 18 or 20 people in our group playing in my parents' basement on like a Saturday, where we had campaign games every weekend. It was a big thing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So, what have you been up to lately outside of 3D printing?
All right, a little backstory about myself. I run the West Bend Board Game Club, and we meet like once or twice a week at this board game store called Hobby Nights, which is kind of downtown West Bend.
Yeah. As downtown as you can be, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose. It's a few blocks away from the real downtown, but it's downtown. It's main drag. We've been going strong for 6+ years, I think. I would have to ask Jason.
Wow, is it that long?
But, yeah.
Dang.
I pulled up, I think it was a 2014 newspaper article on us when we first were at the library. We started at the local library.
Yeah.
And that went well for a while. And then we decided to go to Moraine Park Technical College and went and played there on Saturdays. and eventually we moved to Hobby Nights, and that worked out good. We skipped back and forth to like the Moose Lodge, wherever had tables and chairs, and we've been going strong since then. What was it? We have about 20 or 30 solid members that show up on a regular basis, but we also have probably about 100 to 150 people that are on paper that come and go. Some of the people come for a little while and then they bug out, or they move, or they get a job, or they get married, or something happens, life, you know.
Yeah.
But like this last week, and I went to a convention called Fire and Ice, and that's been going on its 20th year is this year, and they upgraded substantially. Originally, they had it at the Manitowoc County Fairgrounds in a shed where they housed cows in the summertime during the fair, and apparently the building was really cold, and they would do it in the middle of February. And by the way, it was February, was it 25th last weekend?
Sure.
And it was 40 degrees out, so it was really nice. And I was able to drive up to Manitowoc. Normally in Wisconsin, and right now it's like usually a foot of snow every weekend, and it's blowing, or it's icy, or
right.
it's
It's
just
not
a really
not
bad
friendly
drive.
weather.
And Manitowoc's about an hour away east of here. So I drove up there, and they actually moved to the Holiday Inn, and they actually have a convention, like a small convention center with meeting rooms, and it worked out really good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they had an auction that was mind-boggling huge.
Really?
One of the biggest silent auctions I've ever seen.
Wow.
Dudes were putting up Kickstarters. They had like the shipping box, like I don't know if you've seen the Batman Kickstarter that just recently came out. There's like 7 big boxes that come in it, tons of minis. Some guy put it up for auction, and another guy, as soon as the auction opened, he bid on it, like they had a buy it now type thing, and he took it away. There was like Rising Sun Kickstarters, anything that was Kickstarter was all up there.
Cool.
Like somebody bought 2 of each and put one up in auction. What else was there? There was a math trade, which I participated in. And
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What is a math trade?
So on BGG, Board Game Geek,
Yeah.
somebody puts up together a math trade, and there's a forum. And Jack from Milwaukee, great guy, by the way, if you ever get to meet him,
Okay.
he makes a forum where you can submit your wants. Like, I want Arkham Horror, right?
Okay.
And maybe somebody's like, yeah, I can get rid of Arkham Horror. I played the heck out of that game. But, I want, something kind of equal value. So whatever you think an equal value game is, let's say, I don't know, one of those Dungeons and Dragons Tomb of Annihilation, right?
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I got that. I'll trade 1 for 1. That's cool. And then you kind of put it all together. And I think there was something like 300 items that were on the list.
Wow.
So you go through a website and you have your games, and I had 15 games up, and then you go up against all these other games, and you kind of put on this list what you would be willing to trade for. And this online want generator mathematically figures out the last purchase on BGG, or the average purchases of BGG. Like, let's say Arkham Horror used would go for like $50, and Tomb of Annihilation goes for like $60, but it's close enough, and they'll make the trades for you. Sometimes it's a 3-way trade. Sometimes you have to get a third-party trade in. And I ended up trading, 5 games that I have no use for. I mean, I have use for it, but it just clogged up the shelves, and I got 5 different games, as a result of it.
Cool.
And you meet up with these guys, and you meet other gamers, and you're like, here you go, here's your games, and then you get your games from them, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, that sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes you do really good. Sometimes you're like, man, I got kind of hosed. Sometimes that happens too.
Yeah.
But just if you know what you're doing, usually come out ahead.
That's
So
interesting.
we did that, played some board games. There was vendors there from all over the area, from like Appleton, Green Bay, Manitowoc. As far as there's a guy that is a war gamer, my buddy Chuck from DVG. He was selling his game mats and
very
more.
cool.
Yeah, he was up there from West Bend.
Yeah.
And we just played games, sat around, partied a little bit. Got to
Nice.
see some old friends of mine.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that sounds pretty exciting.
Oh,
So,
for sure.
like, I know you're involved in the group around here. Like, did you run events up there, or are there events up there that the board game group runs, or you just kind of it's just kind of a free for all, show up and play whatever, find people to play?
Yeah, this is separate from the club. I
Yeah.
really, when I go to cons and stuff, I've worked cons, I volunteered and stuff at conventions.
Yeah.
You can submit events, and a lot of these local conventions, if you submit so many hours of events, they'll give you a free badge,
Oh, no kidding.
which is super awesome. Like if you run 8 hours, if you're going to be there from Friday to Sunday, 8 hours really isn't that much. You know,
No.
you can run like a couple games, you know, like 2 or 3, 4 games, and you get a free badge. And then sometimes you get a T-shirt, some swag.
Yeah, that's all
You get
right.
access to, they have a Game Master lounge sometimes where they offer free refreshments and snacks. So you can Mountain Dew up all weekend.
I mean,
Get your fix on sugar and stuff.
nothing wrong with that.
No,
Well, that's pretty
nothing.
sweet.
Yeah, and it worked out great. I mean, most local cons are really fun. I
Yeah.
have never been to a bad one,
Nice.
so for sure.
Yeah. So out of that whole experience, what was the number one game, or did you play a game multiple times that was that good?
Actually, I ended up playing 3 games. I only went there Saturday.
Okay.
I played 3 games, and I ended up running into some friends, and we sat around and talked about how everything's, games and shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
I played Amerigo. I played St. Petersburg, and I played a really interesting game called
Okay.
Trismegistus. It's an alchemist game, which
All right.
is pretty interesting and super heavy.
Yeah.
Want me to talk about those? I can.
Maybe the last one. So the last one, Alchemist game. You mean like you're a potion maker and collecting materials and stuff, or?
Yeah. So Trismegistus is you're kind of like an amateur alchemist trying to take over the title of master alchemist,
Okay.
and you're supposed to win the pharaoh over Hermes Trismegistus. I'm reading off of BGG right now. But it's dice allocation.
Okay.
You roll some dice. They all have funky symbols, like like the sign for Mercury, and
Okay.
the sign for lead, and all that. I forget the name of the symbols, but if you look at symbology stuff, it's on these dice. And there's certain spots that these dice go. There's red dice, there's black dice, and there's white dice.
Okay.
And everybody's got a player board. Each player board's a little different depending on what alchemist you're playing at the same time. On the back side of those boards, there's a generic side, so you can play either generic side or you can play the more advanced side. Everybody gets to be a different alchemist, like I said.
Okay.
So you're allocating these dice, and each dice that you allocate might have a certain power. And there's like a scale of power, and you can do certain things on that certain die's faces track. You can gain you can transmute stuff. You can gain more of that material, and ultimately you're trying to create these potions and upgrading these potions through these actions. And there's like actually 3 rounds of it, and you have 3 dice for each round, and you keep going through the game, and whoever has the most victory points wins the game.
Nice.
But I just scratched the surface of it. I'm, not even explaining the whole entire
Yeah.
game because it's so in depth. There's like different tracks.
So is this one of those games that
transmuted.
falls into the category of like are you playing mostly solo but competitive in terms of trying to score, or do you end up like in a position to like interfere in some way with the other players?
It's a little, well, it's kind of like a race game
Okay.
for the most part. You're racing on certain tracks. It is kind of you're trying to grab a certain die because, for example, if you roll lead, let's say, lead will have like 4 dice with that face of die, so that's a power of 4. So if I grab one of those dice, I have a power of 4 lead dice. If you wanted it, you would only get power of 3 because there's only 3 dice left in the pool. And
Got
then
it.
the next guy would have 2. But that's just one area or aspect of the game.
Yeah.
Might I add, there's like several pools of dice. So there's several different die faces that you could grab onto.
Okay.
but not necessarily every single die spot will have a power of 4. It could be 3, it could be 2, depending on how you roll. You roll all these dice, it's probably like 15 or 16 dice at once, and then you just allocate them all to their faces. You're separating them
Cool.
by their eye faces.
Well, that's pretty slick.
So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting mechanic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it seems like you're kind of just jockeying for position based on who's got the most powerful thing.
For sure.
Or material, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's how that kind of plays out.
Yeah. So one of the last things I wanted to do before we head out of here for the first episode ish of our podcast, I wanted to ask, what's one thing you're looking forward to? And I'll start to kind of give you some time to think about it. But this could be a Kickstarter, a new game, a thing that's coming out, a pre-order, a thing you got in the mail on the way, something coming soon. Could be an old game you bought, whatever, it doesn't matter. For me, there's a Kickstarter currently from a company called Darkhold Miniatures. These guys make kind of old school metal casted miniatures. They have a Kickstarter for some kobold miniatures, and kobolds are these little kind of dragon demon looking gnarly little guys that are kind of knee high to most humans in Dungeons and Dragons. With my kids, I've been playing kind of we'll call it a fake RPG with them, but I've been using some of the kobolds to kind of act as the bad guys, or or in kid terms, the naughty guys in the forest that want to take your stuff. And so they have a Kickstarter out right now, and they are making some cavalry. All the guys I bought from them previously was a little package of them. I think got 20 or 30. They now have a cavalry kit. They're kind of riding some lizard-looking things. I'm pretty stoked to have some extra guys in there that can move faster, and they were fun to paint. I painted them with the kids. They're a good time. But yeah, they're just little kind of, I guess they're technically 28 millimeter miniatures. They're cast in metal. They're pretty old school. I took a lot of filing and messing around to get them to look normal or not have all these kind of flashing and the flashing and bits kind of hanging off. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked about that. And the Kickstarter looks like it'll be funded in the next week or so. And I'm looking forward to that kind of thing. So what about you, Matt?
I set a New Year's resolution of trying to complete as many campaign or I guess legacy games. I don't know if you know what a legacy board game is.
I do.
I have like 3 or 4 of them that are just sitting around that they need to get done. They need to finish. And I always start with a group, and we get to the first, second, or third game of that, and then everybody buys that game and like goes to their separate groups.
Yeah. Or
they just kind of like move on. My group has a tendency to find the new shiny and they latch onto it, and then once they're on that new shiny, they go to the next new shiny. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here, guys, let's play this, Arkham Horror, the card game, or like Pandemic Legacy Season 1. I'm still at Season 1. I want to play. But right now, speaking of which, I'm playing. Have you ever played the game Clank?
Clank. I know the name, but I don't think I've played it.
It's a deck builder. It's such a fun game. It's almost a family game. I would say it's a family deck building game. They put out a legacy game called Acquisitions Incorporated.
Okay.
And my group is on. We're going on to game 7 of 10 games, and it's amazing. It's the best legacy game out there. I'll say that now. And we're hopefully going to get that done in the next couple of weeks. I hope so, because then we can move on to the next one. And they promised me that it's going to be one of my games.
That sounds good. Yeah. I mean, it's on one of these future podcasts, I'll explain my my exodus from board games that happened a couple of years ago. But I'll probably wait till Jason's on.
And how we're going to get you back.
I doubt it. My kids will probably be the ones that get me back. I have a very full cabinet of Haba games currently that I've been playing with the kids, and it scratches the itch I have for board games. But most of the games are simple; they go quick. I can, enjoy them with the kids, and it's pretty great. But yeah, it's a story for another day. We'll put it that way. But I'll need Jason for backup on that one. So so I'm going to wrap this one up. For those of you that try to hop on, I have no idea if the live stream worked. If it did, great. Thanks for joining us. If not, we're going to package this up. We're going to put it online. Hopefully we can get some people in the future on this.
Yeah.
Matt, myself, and Jason would like to make this a regular habit. We have a few other friends that collaborate with us on lostice.com, and We've been talking about doing podcasts for a long time, and now we're doing it. So find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, find us on our Facebook page. Come talk to us. Talk to us, and let's chat about games and things we like to do. It doesn't have to be board games or miniatures. It could be both. It could be none. It could be video games. I don't know, something fun. But Matt, I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
Hey, thanks, Bill.
And I am excited to roll this first episode. Thank you for joining us for episode 1, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.